The winter wind howled outside Buckingham Palace, rattling the ornate window panes as if warning of the storm within. King Charles sat alone in his private study, a room steeped in centuries of tradition, heavy with the scent of polished oak and old leather. The fire crackled in the hearth, shadows dancing across the walls, yet the warmth could not reach the chill in his bones. His eyes, usually steady and commanding, flickered with an uncharacteristic tension. On the polished mahogany desk lay a tablet, its screen glowing faintly. The evidence it held had arrived anonymously, yet its implications were unmistakable. Charles' hand hovered over it, hesitant, knowing that a single tap could change everything. Before we begin today's royal update, I want to take a quick moment. Many of you watch these videos but haven't subscribed yet, and you don't want to miss the latest developments and fascinating stories from the world of royalty. Subscribing is completely free and keeps you updated as everything unfolds. While you're here, tell us, where are you watching from? Share it in the comments. It's amazing to see viewers joining us from all around the world. The video opened with a subtle, deliberate framing. A yacht in the Caribbean, laughter on the deck, the faint glint of sunlight on water. But it was the woman, her silhouette unmistakable even at a distance, that drew Charles' breath tight. He recognized her posture, her gestures, the way she carried herself. And in that moment, the foundation of his carefully managed life seemed to shift. The palace, for all its grandeur and centuries of protocol, felt suddenly fragile, like a house of cards trembling under the weight of a single, unsteady hand. News of the leak moved faster than the palace could react. By dawn, social media exploded. Headlines screamed with suspicion and accusation, echoing through timelines, feeds, and group chats. The world was watching, and the court of public opinion required no proof to judge. Memes circulated, hashtags trended, opinions solidified, and whispers of scandal turned into a deafening roar. Buckingham Palace, accustomed to discreet handling of crises, now faced a tidal wave of global scrutiny. Advisors whispered and shuffled papers, but the truth of the video, real or perceived, had a power beyond containment. Charles leaned back, pressing a hand to his temple. His mind raced, sifting through decades of duty, public expectation, and private concern. Every decision felt monumental, every hesitation catastrophic. The implications for the monarchy, for his legacy, for the family he had sworn to protect, each weighed heavily. And yet, even amidst the rising panic, a part of him wondered if there was more to this than met the eye. Was it a setup, a coincidence, or a truth long buried now resurfacing to demand acknowledgement? Across the ocean, in the sun-drenched quiet of Montecito, Meghan Markle received news of the scandal with measured composure. She was seated in her study, the morning light catching the curve of her cheek as she read the alert on her tablet. A faint smile touched her lips, not of amusement, but of calculation. She understood the dynamics instantly. The public would react before facts could be verified. The palace would scramble to protect its image. And Harry, caught in the crossfire, would feel the pressure most acutely. Meghan's eyes, calm and unwavering, betrayed nothing of the storm she anticipated, yet every subtle gesture hinted at meticulous mental preparation. Harry, meanwhile, experienced the first pangs of unease. From his quiet home, he scrolled through the cascade of news reports, his jaw tightening as each article seemed to twist reality into a reflection of accusation. The coincidences, the yacht, the timeline, the whispers of connection, gnawed at him. A tension settled between him and Meghan, unspoken but palpable. He trusted her judgment implicitly, yet the shadows of doubt crept in, seeded by the relentless public gaze. He wondered how much of the past might return to haunt them, how many secrets the world was now poised to reveal. Back in London, Charles' gaze shifted from the glowing tablet to the portraits lining the walls, monarchs long gone who had faced crises, rebellions, and scandals. None, he thought, had navigated a storm fueled by instant global opinion, by digital rumor, by the collective judgment of millions. He pressed his fingers to his lips, eyes narrowing in contemplation. The palace was a fortress, yet the tide of public scrutiny was relentless. And in the quiet of that study, he made a silent vow. He would protect the monarchy, shield his family, and uncover the truth, no matter where it led. Outside, the wind continued its mournful cry, rattling windows and echoing through empty corridors. Inside, the stage was set. The video was no longer just pixels on a screen. It was a spark, igniting a fire that would consume certainty, test loyalty and challenge every carefully laid plan. And in that instant, across oceans and oceans of public opinion, the first moves in a high-stakes game had begun, unseen yet inevitable, as the shadow of scandal stretched its fingers toward the heart of the monarchy. The morning sun broke over London, but it did little to pierce the storm brewing within the palace walls. By the time Charles had assembled his advisors, the scandal had already erupted across every digital platform. Headlines screamed with insinuation, videos replayed endlessly, and commentary cascaded in a torrent impossible to ignore. The monarchy, long shielded by protocol and discretion, now faced scrutiny from an audience with no patience for nuance. Every gesture, every statement, or the absence of one, was dissected, analyzed, and weaponized. Charles sat at the long, polished table, flanked by aides whose expressions oscillated between anxiety and calculation. Legal counsel, press officers, and private secretaries shuffled documents as advisors debated strategy. Every proposal seemed reactive, every plan inadequate against the velocity of social media. "We must contain this," one whispered. "We must respond before it spirals," said another. Charles remained silent, absorbing each recommendation, aware that a single misstep could amplify the damage beyond repair. He knew instinctively that truth alone would not quell the frenzy. Perception was now the battlefield. Across the Atlantic, Meghan and Harry watched the unfolding storm with a sense of detached focus. Their home, normally a sanctuary, was now a war room of strategy, with laptops, smartphones, and encrypted messages mapping the tide of public opinion. Meghan leaned back, her eyes scanning data, social feeds, and press coverage. "They're overreacting," she said calmly, though every syllable carried strategic weight. "We need to control the narrative, not chase it." Harry, tense yet trusting, nodded. The instinct to react emotionally battled with the necessity for measured action. Together, they drafted statements, coordinated appearances, and considered legal avenues, not as victims but as architects of their own defense. Back in London, the palace press office scrambled to prepare a statement. Photographs were examined for inconsistencies, videos analyzed frame by frame, and talking points drafted with meticulous care. Every sentence was calibrated to convey authority without arrogance, empathy without weakness. Charles, once a figure of unquestioned decorum, now felt the pressure of a world unwilling to pause for context. The palace itself seemed alive with tension, corridors echoing the quiet footsteps of staff moving between urgent meetings, each footfall a reminder of the relentless gaze outside the gates. Meanwhile, the public reaction was merciless. Commentators, pundits, and journalists debated motives, questioned loyalties, and speculated about hidden truths. Social media feeds were ablaze with accusations and defenses, hashtags trending in real time. Memes trivialized the scandal while opinion pieces dissected every nuance. The monarchy, a centuries-old institution, faced judgment in the court of instant public scrutiny, a verdict rendered in retweets, likes, and viral clips rather than measured deliberation. Charles recognized a sobering truth. The palace could issue statements, but it could not dictate perception. Control had shifted to the global audience, and every misstep would be amplified exponentially. In Montecito, Meghan considered the broader implications. This was not merely a personal crisis. It was a reflection of power dynamics, media manipulation, and public expectation. Every move they made would be scrutinized not only for truth but for optics. She plotted carefully, weighing transparency against strategic restraint. Harry, absorbing the reality of their situation, understood that public perception could not be fully tamed but could be guided. Together, they crafted a narrative that balanced dignity, assertiveness, and empathy, a delicate dance in the shadow of relentless scrutiny. The palace, meanwhile, initiated discreet investigations. Security briefings, background checks, and discreet inquiries unfolded behind closed doors. Advisors worked frantically to trace the origins of the video leak, to anticipate potential escalations, and to prepare for the inevitable questions from Parliament, the media, and the public. Yet Charles knew instinctively that containment alone would not suffice. Engagement, discernment, and timing would define the monarchy's ability to survive this storm. As evening fell, the world's gaze intensified. Public forums, online commentary, and television coverage converged into a relentless tide. Charles remained in his study, tablet in hand, weighing options that felt simultaneously infinitesimal and monumental. Across oceans, Meghan and Harry read the same coverage with practiced calm, adjusting strategy in real time. The first sparks of conflict had ignited. The storm was no longer theoretical. Every statement, every appearance, and every silence became a move in a high-stakes game that transcended borders, reputation, and even familial bonds. Outside, London's winter night deepened. The wind rattled windows like distant warning bells. Inside, the palace hummed with calculated urgency. Somewhere between legacy and perception, truth and speculation, the monarchy's oldest institution faced a test unlike any in living memory. And as screens flickered across continents, one realization crystallized: this was not a fleeting scandal. This was the beginning of a new era, an era defined by immediacy, visibility, and an unforgiving public that demanded answers before the palace could even prepare them. The tension that had simmered for weeks reached a breaking point. The palace, usually a fortress of protocol, now felt fragile, every corridor and meeting room charged with the weight of unspoken accusations. Charles, once confident in the rhythm of ceremonial life, found himself confronting not just the public storm, but the personal fractures that had long lingered beneath the polished veneer of duty. The leak had exposed more than a private moment. It had revealed vulnerabilities the monarchy had never been trained to manage in the age of viral scrutiny. A private meeting was called in one of the palace's grand drawing rooms, its walls lined with portraits of ancestors whose legacies seemed suddenly distant and irrelevant. Charles sat at one end of the mahogany table, Meghan and Harry represented at the other through legal advisors, their presence felt in statements and counsel. Voices were low but sharp, every word chosen with precision, measured for impact yet heavy with emotion. The discussion shifted between fact and accusation, history and interpretation, leaving no room for ambiguity. Each participant was aware that the outcome would shape public perception and private relationships simultaneously. Outside, the world watched with insatiable curiosity. A statement from the palace was scheduled, meticulously drafted, every phrase weighed for its potential to mollify critics without conceding weakness. Charles rehearsed each sentence, each inflection, understanding that televised appearances and press releases would be dissected to the letter. Yet the real confrontation would not be mediated through screens. It would occur in private, in the silent understanding between those who bore the burden of visibility and those who felt the sting of betrayal. The first public acknowledgement came in the form of a brief statement, the kind that had once sufficed to quell speculation. Charles's words were calm, deliberate, an appeal to duty, an assertion of continuity, a nod to respect for all parties involved. Yet the world read between lines, interpreting pauses, glances, and omissions. Headlines twisted neutrality into critique. Commentators suggested motives, intentions, and hidden narratives. The monarchy's control of messaging had become a complex negotiation between truth, perception, and the relentlessness of the digital age. Meanwhile, Meghan and Harry orchestrated their own communications with a deft blend of transparency and strategy. Social media posts, interviews, and op-eds carefully layered context with emotion, presenting a narrative that emphasized integrity, autonomy, and resilience. Every word was designed to counteract misinterpretation, to assert agency in the face of historical power, and to maintain dignity without inflaming further confrontation. The Sussexes' approach highlighted a fundamental shift. In a world dominated by instantaneous information, shaping perception could be as decisive as controlling events themselves. Tension escalated beyond statements into personal confrontation. Advisors delivered summaries, emails, and memos, but none could convey the weight of history, familial expectation, and accumulated grievances. Charles wrestled with pride, responsibility, and the desire to protect legacy, while Meghan and Harry navigated the tightrope between self-preservation and public accountability. Each private reflection, every decision, carried the potential to resonate far beyond the palace walls, creating ripples that would reach citizens, media outlets, and governments alike. The palace grounds, normally echoing with quiet footsteps, now thrummed with activity. Security briefings intensified, press liaisons monitored social sentiment, and legal teams prepared contingencies for every conceivable outcome. The crisis had transcended scandal. It had become a study in human behavior under pressure, a collision between centuries-old protocol and the immediacy of global judgment. Charles recognized that the monarchy's survival depended not only on strategy, but on emotional intelligence, patience, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. In Montecito, Meghan and Harry's team coordinated timing and messaging with surgical precision. Every press release, interview snippet, and social media post was scheduled to maximize clarity and minimize misinterpretation. The Sussexes moved like tacticians, balancing assertiveness with empathy, ensuring that their narrative neither inflamed the palace nor alienated supporters. This dual approach reflected a broader understanding. In the age of constant visibility, control was impossible, but influence could still be exerted with skill and discipline. By nightfall, both sides were exhausted yet aware that no resolution would come from mere endurance. Emotional stakes were at their peak, private grievances were publicized, legacies questioned, relationships tested. The palace and Montecito had become parallel theaters, each performance observed and critiqued by an audience with unprecedented reach. Every word, every gesture carried dual significance, intimate and global, personal and political. The confrontation had shifted from rumor and speculation to direct engagement, and neither side could retreat without consequence. As London slept, the palace remained restless. Charles reviewed statements, assessed advisors' reports, and considered the broader historical implications. Across the Atlantic, Meghan and Harry strategized with clarity born from necessity, aware that perception, timing, and emotional resonance were now as critical as legal maneuvers or public appearances. The stage was set for the final act, a convergence of legacy, truth, and human emotion that would leave no observer unaffected. The storm had reached its zenith, and the next move would define not only individual futures, but the evolving identity of monarchy itself. The aftermath of confrontation left no corner of the palace untouched. Echoes of decisions made in haste and deliberation alike lingered in hallways, offices, and chambers where portraits of ancestors seemed to watch, judging every action. Charles, having faced both public scrutiny and private challenge, understood that leadership demanded more than protocol. It demanded courage, humility, and the ability to confront uncomfortable truths without flinching. Each statement released, each gesture made in the public eye, was carefully calibrated to restore trust, yet it carried the indelible mark of conflict. The public response was immediate, intense, and polarized. News outlets dissected every nuance, social media amplified every phrase, and commentary flowed relentlessly across platforms. Citizens debated loyalty, justice, and morality, reflecting the broader tension between tradition and transparency. For Charles, this was no longer a matter of reputation alone. It was about the enduring relevance of the monarchy in a world that had shifted far beyond ceremonial symbolism. He realized that survival depended on the ability to adapt, to reconcile, and to acknowledge mistakes without diminishing authority. In parallel, Meghan and Harry navigated their own post-confrontation reality. Their narrative of autonomy, integrity, and resilience had resonated with millions, yet they faced the challenge of balancing advocacy with reconciliation. Carefully worded interviews and charitable initiatives demonstrated a commitment to positive influence, signaling that personal empowerment need not conflict with respect for institutions or family. Their actions reflected a deep understanding that legacy is shaped not only by moments of conflict, but by the capacity to foster understanding and change. Reconciliation, when it came, was gradual and nuanced. Private conversations, long, difficult, and honest, began to bridge gaps that seemed insurmountable at the height of confrontation. Acknowledgement of pain, expression of empathy, and a willingness to find common ground allowed wounds to mend, though not without scars. Charles extended gestures of recognition, and the Sussexes reciprocated with measured openness, demonstrating that resolution is rarely instantaneous but can be cultivated through deliberate dialogue. These moments, though unseen by most, carried more weight than public declarations. They were the quiet work of rebuilding trust, understanding, and human connection. The fallout also brought practical shifts. Protocols were updated to better address communication in the digital age. Advisory teams were restructured to anticipate the speed and intensity of modern scrutiny. Lessons learned from the confrontation informed future governance, blending tradition with adaptability. The palace emerged not unchanged, but stronger, more self-aware, and more capable of navigating both ceremony and crisis. Charles's leadership, tested by the storm, evolved into a more reflective, empathetic form, acknowledging that authority gains legitimacy not only through power, but through the courage to confront mistakes and listen to dissenting voices. Meanwhile, the Sussexes focused on their broader mission: advocacy, philanthropy, and engagement with global audiences. Their experience reinforced a belief that visibility carries responsibility, and that influence is most meaningful when used to uplift, educate, and inspire. By maintaining transparency while respecting boundaries, they cultivated a narrative of resilience and principled action that extended beyond personal vindication. Their legacy, intertwined with the monarchy's ongoing evolution, became a testament to the complexity of public life, the endurance of family ties, and the transformative power of honesty. In the end, history would remember this period not solely as a clash of personalities or a battle of wills, but as a turning point for an institution long defined by tradition. The monarchy's survival depended not on avoidance of conflict, but on its ability to reconcile, evolve, and embrace the human element behind every public gesture. Charles, Meghan, and Harry each emerged with lessons etched into their approach to leadership, family, and legacy. The palace and those it served had been tested, and the outcome demonstrated that even amid discord, growth, understanding, and enduring relevance are possible. As the storm subsided, a fragile calm settled over the palace grounds. Statements now carried measured pride rather than defensive tension, and the Sussexes moved forward with purpose rather than grievance. History would take note, but for those at the center, the resolution was both profoundly personal and emblematic of a broader truth. Legacy is not merely inherited, it is consciously shaped through challenge, confrontation, and the courage to reconcile.